It was a calm Sunday evening when Mary sat by the window of her small house, holding a cup of warm tea between her trembling hands. The air was cool, and the golden light of sunset painted her living room in shades of orange. Outside, children played in the narrow street, their laughter mixing with the faint sound of a distant radio. But inside, Mary's heart felt heavy. She had been waiting for her son David's call for weeks. He used to call her every few days, but lately he had become quiet, distant, and cold. She told herself he must be busy, that maybe work was taking his time. But deep down, she knew something had changed. Mary had always been close to David. After her husband died years ago, David became her reason to live. He was her only child, her pride, her comfort. She had raised him alone, working long hours at a local school as a clerk, saving every bit of her income to give him a better life. And when he got a good job in the city, she thought her sacrifices had finally been worth it. But lately, the distance between them felt more than just miles. It felt emotional. Like a silent wall had come up between mother and son. That evening, as she watched the sky darken, her phone suddenly rang. Her heart skipped. It was an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment before picking it up. Double quotes, "Hello," she said softly. "Hi. Is this Mrs. Mary Collins?" A woman's voice replied. It was gentle, polite, but had a strange tone, something between nervousness and guilt. "Yes, it is," Mary said, confused. "Who's this?" There was a pause. Then the voice said quietly, "I'm Clara, David's friend." Mary froze for a moment. Clara, the name rang a bell. David had once mentioned a woman named Clara, coworker he used to talk about, but never in much detail. "Oh yes, I remember. You work with him, right?" she asked, her tone light, trying to hide her curiosity. "Yes. We used to," Clara said slowly. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important." Mary felt a strange chill crawl up her arms. The woman's tone sounded serious, almost too serious. "Is everything okay? Is David all right?" There was another pause. Then Clara said, "Yes, he's fine, but I think I should tell you something. I hope you don't get upset." Mary's heart began to pound. Her hand tightened around the phone. "Tell me what?" she asked. Clara took a deep breath on the other side. "Yesterday, David and I got married." For a few seconds, the room went silent. The sound of the ticking clock grew louder. Mary couldn't breathe. Her eyes widened in disbelief as the words echoed in her mind. "We got married." "What?" she whispered, her voice breaking. You married my son." "Yes," Clara said softly. "It was a small ceremony. Just us. I know it's sudden." But Mary didn't let her finish. "But why didn't he tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm his mother. Why didn't he even call me?" "I'm so sorry," Clara said, her voice shaking now. "He wanted to, but things got complicated." Mary stood up from her chair, her teacup slipping from her hands and falling to the floor. It shattered into pieces, spilling dark tea across the carpet. Her breathing became fast. "Complicated. What does that mean?" she asked sharply. Clara hesitated again, then said, "He thought you might not like me." The words hit Mary like a slap. Not like her. She felt tears sting her eyes. "How could he think that? I don't even know you," she cried. "He didn't even give me a chance to meet you." "I understand," Clara said softly. "I told him to talk to you, but he said he needed time then. He just decided we should do it quietly." Mary sank down into her chair, her legs weak. She stared at the floor, her heart breaking into pieces she couldn't gather. "So it's done," she whispered, her voice hollow. "My only son got married, and I didn't even know. Sorry," Clara said again. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought you should know." Mary wanted to scream, to cry, to ask more questions, but her throat felt dry. All she could say was, "I still remember that night. When David told me he'd introduce me to someone special soon, I waited for that day. I dreamed of his wedding, of standing beside him with pride. And now it's all gone." There was silence. Only the sound of the wind outside filled the room. After a long pause, Mary asked in a low voice, Where is he now? Peace at home, Clara replied. We're living together now. He's at work at the moment. I just thought I should call you myself. Mary's mind raced. Every memory of David flashed before her eyes' first school day, his graduation, the way he hugged her before moving to the city. And now the image of him marrying without her tore through her heart. Please don't blame him too much, Clara said quietly. He really loves you, but he didn't know how to tell you.
Oh,
Mary didn't answer. Her hand was shaking so much she almost dropped the phone. Clara continued. I want you to meet us soon. Maybe when things settle down a bit. I really want to know you. Mary swallowed the lump in her throat and forced herself to speak. Yes, maybe, she whispered. I need some time. Course, Clara said gently. I understand. I'm really sorry again, Mrs. Collins. And then the call ended. Mary sat in silence. The room felt colder now. The ticking clock echoed louder. She looked at the broken cup on the floor, at the dark tea seeping into the rug like spilled memories. Her eyes filled with tears, and finally, they fell slowly, silently. She didn't know how long she sat there staring at nothing. Her thoughts were a storm. Why didn't David tell her? What had she done wrong? Was there something about Clara he was hiding? Night fell completely outside. The children's laughter faded. Streetlights flickered on, casting weak yellow light through the window. Mary felt like she was trapped in a dream that wasn't a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. After some time, she stood up slowly, wiped her tears, and looked at David's photo on the wall. It was from his graduation day. He was smiling, proud, holding his degree in his hand. Mary had that same photo printed in every room. She touched the frame gently and whispered, Why, David? Why didn't you tell me? Her phone buzzed again. She jumped, hoping it was David this time. But it wasn't. It was a message from Clara. Mrs. Collins, I really hope we can talk in person soon. I want to make things right. Mary stared at the message for a long time. Something about it felt strange. The words were polite, but the timing so soon after the call made her uneasy. She typed a short reply, Maybe I'll think about it. Then she put the phone away and walked to her bedroom. But as she reached the door, she heard a soft ding. Another message. She hesitated before checking it. This time, it wasn't from Clara. It was from David. Mom, please don't be angry. I was going to tell you everything soon. Mary's hand shook. The words was going to echoed in her head. He was going to tell me, but when? After everything was done? She wanted to call him right away to demand answers. But her heart stopped her. Maybe she wasn't ready to hear the truth. Not yet. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring into the darkness. The sound of crickets outside filled the silence. Her mind kept replaying Clara's voice, soft, apologetic. But hiding something? She whispered to herself. There's more to this story. I can feel it. Her instinct told her that something about Clara's call wasn't right. The way she spoke, the way she said we used to work together as if something had ended. What did she mean by that? And why did she call instead of David himself? Mary couldn't sleep that night. Every sound in the house made her jump. She got up several times, walked to the living room, looked out the window, and sat back down. Her heart felt heavy, but her mind wouldn't rest. By midnight, she made a decision. She needed to see her son, face to face. She couldn't let this mystery eat her alive. She went to her small cupboard, opened the drawer, and pulled out an old photo album. It was full of David's pictures, his childhood, his first school play, his birthdays, his college graduation. She smiled weakly, remembering his laughter, his innocence. You were my whole world, she whispered. Then her eyes fell on a picture she hadn't noticed before. David standing beside a woman at some office party. The woman was smiling, her hand almost touching his. Mary's heart tightened. It was Clara. She remembered that face from the news photo David once showed her. But there was something about Clara's eyes in the photos. Something distant, cold, almost calculating. Mary couldn't explain why, but it sent a strange chill through her. She closed the album slowly and looked out the window again. The moonlight poured into the room, soft but haunting. The street outside was silent, and then she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I'll go see him." But as she turned off the light and lay down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was waiting for her at the end of that decision. Morning light slipped through the thin curtains of Mary's bedroom, casting soft golden lines on the walls. She had barely slept all night. Her mind had been running like a restless train, filled with questions, doubts, and memories that refused to fade. When she finally got up, the world outside was already awake. Birds chirping, cars honking faintly in the distance, and the smell of bread from the bakery next door. But inside Mary's heart there was only silence, heavy, cold, and full of worry. She stood before the mirror and looked at her tired face. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair messy from a night of tossing and turning. "You need to be strong," she whispered to herself. "You're his mother. You deserve the truth." She washed her face, changed into a simple blue dress, and tied her hair neatly. Then, after a deep breath, she took her purse and stepped outside. The morning breeze brushed against her face as she locked the door of her small home. The sky was pale, the kind of color that makes everything look uncertain. She walked to the bus stop, her heart thudding faster with every step. David's home was in another part of the city, a place she hadn't visited in a long time. She still remembered the address, 42 Maple Street, but today, the name itself made her nervous. The bus ride felt endless. As it moved through the busy city roads, Mary kept replaying Clara's voice in her mind. "We married yesterday." Those 3 words echoed again and again, like a haunting melody she couldn't escape. What hurt most was not just that David had married without telling her, but that he had shared one of the most special moments of his life with someone else, while she, his own mother, sat miles away, waiting for a phone call. When the bus finally stopped near Maple Street, Mary stepped out and looked around. The area was quiet, tall buildings, small gardens, and neat sidewalks. It was beautiful, but somehow it felt too quiet, almost unnaturally so. She walked slowly, her heart pounding as she searched for house number 42. After a few minutes, she found it, a small white house with a gray fence and rose bushes outside. The gate was slightly open. She stood there for a moment, trying to steady her breath. Should I knock? She wondered. Should I call first? But before she could decide, the front door opened. Clara stepped out. She was wearing a light pink dress, her hair tied in a neat ponytail. She looked calm, but her eyes widened when she saw Mary standing there. For a second, neither of them spoke. The wind rustled the leaves of the rose bushes, filling the silence between them. "Mrs. Collins?" Clara finally said, her voice uncertain. "You came." Mary forced a weak smile. "Yes, I thought it was time we met." Clara nodded slowly and stepped aside. "Please, come in." Mary entered the house, her eyes scanning the living room. Everything was clean and modern, gray sofas, white curtains, framed photos on the wall. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something floral. On one side of the room stood a large photograph of David and Clara, smiling at each other. Mary's chest tightened at the sight. "You have a lovely home," she said quietly. "Thank you," Clara replied. She seemed nervous, her hands fidgeting slightly. "Would you like some tea or coffee?" "Tea, please," Mary said. She sat down on the edge of the sofa, eyes wandering across the room. While Clara went into the kitchen, Mary looked closer at the photos. Most of them showed the couple smiling at a park, at a restaurant, at what looked like an office event. But one photo caught her attention. It was half hidden behind another frame. When she moved it slightly, her heart skipped. The picture was old, Clara standing with another man, not David. They were holding hands, and the man had a strange, familiar face. Before she could think further, Clara returned with 2 cups of tea. "Here you go," she said softly, placing the tray on the table. "Thank you," Mary said, setting the frame back quickly. She tried to act normal. "So, how long have you known David?" Clara smiled faintly. "Almost 2 years. We met at work. It started as friendship, and then it just happened." Mary nodded slowly, taking a small sip of tea. "And you two decided to marry without telling anyone?" Clara lowered her eyes. It wasn't planned like that. David wanted to tell you, but he thought you might not approve. Approve of what? Mary asked, her tone calm but sharp. You seem like a good person. What made him so afraid? Clara's hands trembled slightly. She tried to smile. Maybe he was just worried. He didn't want to upset you. Ah. Mary leaned forward. Clara, I know my son. He's not the type to do things in secret unless something was wrong. Clara looked away, silent. For a few seconds, only the sound of the ticking clock filled the room. Then, she said softly, there were some problems at his work. He was stressed. We thought it was better to do it quietly and then celebrate later with everyone. Her words sounded rehearsed. Mary could feel it. Before she could ask more, she heard the sound of a car outside. Clara stood quickly. That must be David, she said with forced brightness. Mary's heart leaped. She hadn't seen her son in months. She stood too, her hands shaking slightly. The door opened, and there he was. David looked surprised. He froze for a second when he saw his mother standing in his living room. Mom, he whispered, his voice uncertain. Mary's eyes filled with tears. David, she said softly, stepping closer. I had to see you. He looked at Clara, then back at his mother. You should have called first, he said quietly, his tone cautious. I didn't think you'd answer, she replied sadly. There was an awkward silence. Finally, Clara said, I'll give you two some time. And she walked toward the kitchen. Mary and David sat opposite each other. The silence between them was heavy. Why, David? She finally asked, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me? I waited for this moment for years. Your wedding, your happiness. And I wasn't even there. David sighed, rubbing his forehead. Mom, please. I didn't mean to hurt you. Things just got complicated. Clara said the same thing. Mary said sharply, What's so complicated about calling your mother? David didn't answer. His eyes looked tired, almost haunted. You wouldn't understand, he muttered. Then make me understand, Uri said firmly. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but then stopped. He looked toward the kitchen where Clara's shadow moved across the floor. Not now, he whispered. Mary frowned. Not now. What are you hiding, David? He shook his head. It's nothing, just. Please trust me. Mary felt her chest tighten again. I've trusted you your whole life, she said softly. And now I don't even know what's going on in it. Before David could respond, the front door suddenly rattled. Someone was outside knocking hard. Clara came running from the kitchen, her face pale. Don't open it, she said quickly. David froze. Who is it? Clara shook her head. Just don't. The knocking grew louder. Mary's heart began to race. Clara, what's going on? She asked, but Clara didn't answer. She ran to the window and peeked outside. Her face turned white. It's him, she whispered under her breath. David stood up. Who's him? Clara turned, her lips trembling. My brother? Mary blinked in confusion. Your brother. Why does that scare you? Clara didn't reply. The knocking turned into pounding now, strong enough to shake the door, Clara. A deep voice shouted from outside. I know you're in there. Open the door. Mary jumped at the sound. The voice was angry, rough. David grabbed Clara's arm. What's going on, Clara? He demanded. Why is he here? Clara looked terrified. He doesn't know about us, she said quickly. He told me not to marry you. He said it was a mistake. Mary gasped. He told you not to marry my son. Why? But before Clara could answer, the front door burst open with a loud crack. A tall man stormed in, his face red with rage. Clara, he shouted. What have you done? Clara stepped back, trembling. Please, Mark, Don T. She cried. David moved in front of her protectively. Who are you? You can't just barge in like this. Mark glared at him. You're the one who ruined everything. He yelled. Mary stood frozen, her mind spinning. The man's face looked oddly familiar. Where had she seen him before? Then suddenly it hit her. The old photo she saw earlier on the shelf. The man standing in that picture with Clara, it was him. What's going on here? Mary whispered. Mark pointed at David. She was engaged to someone else. You stole her away. David looked shocked. What? That's not true. Clara covered her face, crying. Please stop, Mark. It's over. But Mark ignored her. You lied to him, Clara. You lied to everyone. Mary's heart pounded so fast she thought it would burst. Engaged? She repeated, her voice trembling. Clara, is this true? Clara looked at her, tears rolling down her cheeks. It was before. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she whispered. Mark turned to Mary. You should know who your son married, he said coldly. She's not who she pretends to be. David grabbed Mark's arm angrily. You don't talk to my mother? He snapped. But before anything else could happen, Clara screamed. Stop it, both of you. She pushed them apart, shaking violently. You don't understand. It's not just about me. Everyone froze. The air in the room felt thick, heavy. What do you mean? Mary asked softly. Clara looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. There's something you need to know, she said in a trembling voice. Something about David, and why we had to marry so fast. Mary's heart skipped. What are you talking about? But before Clara could speak another word, Mark shouted, Don't tell her, and rushed forward. Clara screamed. The teacups crashed from the table. Mary stood frozen as chaos filled the room, shouting, footsteps. The sound of something breaking. And in the middle of it all, David shouted one sentence that made Mary's blood turn cold. Mom, get out. Please, you're not safe here. Mary gasped, her hands covering her mouth. David, what's happening? She cried, but he didn't answer. His face was pale, his eyes desperate. Go, Mom, now. Mary backed away slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what was happening, but one thing was certain. Whatever secret her son and his new bride were hiding, it was something dark. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the house like a scream. Mary stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. Her hands shook as she tried to make sense of the chaos in front of her. David was holding Clara tightly, trying to stop her brother Mark from coming any closer. The man's face was red with anger, his eyes burning with something wild. Hate? Fear? Maybe both. Get out. David shouted again. Mom, please, go outside. But Mary couldn't move. Her feet felt glued to the floor. David, what's happening? Tell me what's going on. She cried. Mark pointed a trembling finger at David. You don't know what she's done. He said to Mary, Your son doesn't know who he married. Stop it. Clara screamed, her voice cracking. She turned toward Mary, tears streaming down her face. Please, Mrs. Collins, go. I don't want you to get hurt. Mary's pulse raced faster. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating. The broken teacups on the floor, the shattered glass near the door, the wild look in everyone's eyes. It all felt unreal. Like a nightmare. David pushed Mark toward the door. Leave. He yelled. I don't care who you are. You can't just break into my house. Mark gritted his teeth. You'll regret this, he said darkly. You don't know the truth yet. Then he turned, slammed the door open, and stormed out. The sound of his car engine faded down the street. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Clara stood trembling, her hands covering her face. David ran his fingers through his hair, pacing the room like a man who'd lost control of his own thoughts. Mary looked at both of them, confusion and fear swirling in her chest. Somebody tell me what's going on, she said finally, her voice shaking. Who was that man? And what did he mean? David stopped pacing. He looked at her, his eyes tired and full of guilt. Mom, please, he said softly. It's complicated. Mary's voice grew stronger. Then make it simple, she said. I deserve to know. Clara wiped her tears and spoke before David could. That man is my brother Mark, she said quietly. He doesn't approve of David and me. He thinks I made a mistake. Why? Mary asked, "What's wrong with my son?" Clara looked down. "It's not about David," she said. "It's about my past." Mary frowned. "Your past?" David sighed. "Mom, Clara went through something before we met. Something serious. She didn't want to talk about it because it's painful." Mary folded her arms. "Painful or not, it's already affecting all of us." David opened his mouth to speak, but Clara stopped him with a quiet shake of her head. "No, David, she's right. She needs to know." She took a deep breath and looked at Mary. "3 years ago," she began, "I was engaged. His name was Michael. He was my college friend, my first love. We planned to get married, but then something happened, something terrible. He disappeared." Mary blinked, confused. "Disappeared?" Clara nodded slowly. "Yes. One night, he just vanished. The police couldn't find him. Everyone thought he ran away, but I knew he wouldn't. After that, everything fell apart. My brother blamed me. He said I must have done something to drive Michael away. He never forgave me." Mary tried to understand. "So your brother thinks you had something to do with it?" "Yes," Clara said quietly. "And now he believes David will get hurt too, just like Michael." David placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's why we didn't tell anyone about the wedding. We didn't want Mark to interfere." Mary's heart softened a little, but something about the story didn't sit right. The way Clara's eyes darted around, the way David avoided her gaze, it all felt like there was more left unsaid. After a long silence, "Kay," Mary finally said, "All right. But David, this kind of secrecy only makes things worse. You should have trusted me." I know," David said quietly. "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought I could handle it." Mary sighed. "You're my son. You don't have to handle things alone." They sat together for a while, trying to calm down. Clara went to clean the broken glass from the floor, and Mary helped her in silence. The atmosphere was heavy, but slowly it began to settle. Still, Mary's mind was full of questions as she was about to leave. Clara said gently, "Mrs. Collins, please don't think badly of me. I truly love David. I didn't want to cause any of this." Mary nodded weakly. "I believe you," she said, though deep down she wasn't sure she did. Outside, the wind had picked up. Clouds covered the sun, and the air smelled like rain. Mary wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and began walking back toward the bus stop. Her mind replayed everything that had happened. The shouting, the fear in Clara's eyes, Mark's strange words. "You don't know who she is." When she reached home, she felt drained. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window again, staring out at the empty street. "I still remember that day," she whispered to herself, "when David promised he'd never keep secrets from me." The next few days passed slowly. Mary didn't call David, and he didn't call her. She wanted to give him space, but she also wanted answers. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Clara's face, calm but distant, hiding something. On the third night, something strange happened. Around midnight, Mary heard a soft knock on her front door. She froze. Who would come at this hour? The knocking came again, louder this time. She walked to the door carefully and looked through the small glass panel. No one was there. Her heart thudded. She slowly opened the door. The street was empty, only the sound of wind moving through the trees. She was about to close the door when she noticed something lying on the ground. It was an envelope. Mary picked it up and looked around once more. But there was no sign of anyone. She went inside, locked the door, and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single photograph, an old picture. Slightly torn at the edges, it showed Clara, but not just Clara. She was standing beside a man, the same man from the photo in David's house. Michael, they were both smiling, standing near a car. But what made Mary's blood run cold was what was written on the back of the photo. He never left. She just told everyone he did. Mary's hands shook as she read the words again and again. Who had sent this? Was it Mark? Or someone else? And what did it mean he never left? Her heart began to race. If this message was true, then Clara had lied. But why? The next morning she called David, but his phone was off. She tried again and again, but no answer. Panic started to rise in her chest. She decided to go back to Maple Street. She needed to see him. When she arrived, the front gate was open again. The house looked quiet, too quiet. She knocked on the door. No one answered. She tried the handle. It wasn't locked. She stepped inside cautiously. The living room was dark. Curtains were drawn and the air smelled faintly of something metallic. Maybe spilled wine, maybe something else. She called out, "David, Clara." But there was no reply. Her eyes caught something on the floor near the table. A drawer pulled open and half empty. Papers were scattered around it. She bent down and saw what looked like a photograph sticking out from underneath. She picked it up. It was a wedding photo, but not theirs. It was of Clara and another man, not David. Mary's breath caught. She flipped it over. There was a date written in black ink, June 15th, 2021. That was years before Clara met David. Her fingers trembled as she reached into the drawer again. There were more papers, documents, letters, and one small folded note with David's name on it. She opened it slowly. "If something happens to me, look in the basement." Mary felt her stomach twist. The basement. She hadn't even realized the house had one. Her heart pounded as she looked around. On the far end of the hallway near the kitchen, there was a small door she hadn't noticed before, half hidden behind a shelf. She walked toward it, her hands shaking. She pushed the shelf aside and tried the handle. It creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. "David?" she whispered, her voice echoing faintly. No reply. She took out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The stairs were dusty, the air damp and cold. She stepped down slowly, 1 foot at a time, her breath loud in the silence. When she reached the bottom, she saw boxes, old furniture, and a few scattered tools. Nothing unusual until her light landed on something in the corner. A large wooden trunk. She walked closer, her heart thumping like a drum. The trunk was old, locked with a rusty latch. She knelt down, hands trembling, and gently touched the lid. There was a strange smell, faint, but enough to make her step back. She found a small hammer lying nearby and used it to break the latch open. It snapped with a dull crack. She slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a blanket, folded neatly. She moved it aside and froze. There, beneath the blanket, was a photograph, the same one she had found in the envelope of Clara and Michael. But this time, there was something else too. A wedding ring. Her breath caught. She looked closer. There were 2 rings, tied together with a red thread. And beside them, a small envelope with David's name written on it again. Her heart pounded as she reached for it. She opened the envelope and pulled out a short note. The handwriting was David's mom. "If you find this, please forgive me. I didn't know what she was hiding until it was too late." Mary's hand flew to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. "What did you do, David?" she whispered. The air in the basement suddenly felt colder. She heard a faint creak above her, the sound of footsteps. Someone was in the house. She turned off her flashlight and held her breath. The footsteps grew louder, slow and steady, coming closer to the basement door. "David?" she whispered. But no one answered. The door at the top of the stairs creaked open. A shadow moved in the dim light, and then a soft voice echoed down the steps. "Mrs. Collins, what are you doing down there?" It was Clara. Mary's blood ran cold. The cold air in the basement wrapped around Mary like a warning. She stood frozen, her heart thundering in her chest as Clara's voice echoed softly from the stairs. "Mrs. Collins," Clara said again, her tone calm to calm. "Why are you down there?" Mary's fingers tightened around the note she had found. Her breath came out uneven, shaky. "Clara," she whispered, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I was looking for David." The footsteps grew slower, 1 step at a time, creaking against the old wooden stairs. "David isn't here," Clara replied gently. "He went out." Mary's throat felt dry. "Out where?" Clara paused halfway down. The faint light from the hallway fell on her face, pale, unreadable, eyes glinting with something strange. "He didn't tell me," she said. "You know how he is sometimes. Impulsive." Mary's eyes darted around the basement. The open trunk, the photos, the ring, the note. Everything screamed danger. But she tried to hide her fear. "You scared me," she said softly. "I thought no one was home." Clara smiled faintly and stepped down another stair. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "This part of the house is private." Mary felt her stomach twist. "Private?" she repeated. "Clara, I found something. You need to explain." Clara stopped moving. Her expression hardened slightly. "What did you find?" Mary swallowed hard. She raised the photograph, the one of Clara and Michael. "This," she said. "And this note?" Clara's eyes flickered to the photo, then back to Mary's face. For a moment, silence hung between them like a blade. "Where did you get that?" Clara asked finally, her voice flat. "It was in the trunk," Mary replied, her voice trembling. "In your basement. Clara, you said Michael disappeared? But this says he didn't. What's going on?" Clara's lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but then she closed them again. Her hand gripped the stair railing tightly. "You shouldn't have come here," she said again, softer this time, almost whispering. Mary took a cautious step back. "Tell me the truth, Clara. What happened to Michael?" Clara stared at her for a long moment. Then she slowly walked down the remaining stairs. Her footsteps were soft, measured, like she was choosing every move carefully. She stopped a few feet away from Mary, her face expressionless. "You want the truth?" she said quietly. "Fine." She took a deep breath and looked straight at Mary. "Michael didn't disappear. He died." Mary's heart skipped a beat. "What?" Clara's eyes glistened in the dim light. "He died in this house," she said. "Right here." 3 years ago, Mary's mouth went dry. "How?" she whispered. Clara didn't answer immediately. She turned and walked to the trunk, kneeling beside it. Her fingers brushed over the edge of the wood, tracing the old cracks. "We fought that night," she said finally. "He found out I wanted to leave him. He didn't take it well. He got angry, violent. I tried to stop him, but her voice broke. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "He fell," she continued, barely audible. "He hit his head on the corner of the table. It happened so fast. I panicked. I didn't know what to do." Mary stared at her, horrified. You didn't call the police?" Clara shook her head slowly. "Would they have believed me? Everyone knew he had a temper, but Mark wouldn't have let me live in peace. So I told them he disappeared. I buried the past and moved away." She turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting Mary's. "I didn't want to lie to David, but when I met him, finally felt like I could start over. I thought maybe the past would stay buried." Mary's pulse raced. "Buried," she repeated, her voice trembling. "You mean literally?" Clara didn't answer. A deep silence fell over the room. The only sound was the faint hum of the old refrigerator upstairs. Mary took a shaky step forward. "Clara, where is he?" Clara's eyes darted toward the far wall of the basement. Her lips pressed together tightly. Mary followed her gaze, and her blood ran cold. There, behind a stack of old boxes, the concrete wall looked different, uneven, like it had been patched. "No," Mary whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, tell me that's not—" Clara looked away. Mary stumbled back, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God!" Clara took a step closer. "I didn't want this," she said quickly. "I didn't plan it. It was an accident. But if people found out, they'd destroy me. I can't go to prison for something I didn't mean to do." Mary's breath came fast and uneven. "Does David know?" Clara hesitated. That hesitation told Mary everything. "He found out," she said slowly. "Didn't he?" Tears filled Clara's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yesterday. That's why we fought. He wanted to go to the police. He said he couldn't live with the lie. But I begged him to understand." Mary's hands trembled. "Where is he now, Clara?" she asked sharply. Clara's face crumpled. "I don't know," she said. "He left after our argument. He said he needed time to think." Mary stared at her, trying to find truth in her words. But her gut screamed that something wasn't right. "Show me," Mary said suddenly. Clara blinked. "What?" "Show me where it happened," Mary demanded. "If you want me to believe you, show me." Clara hesitated for a long time, then finally nodded. She walked toward the patched wall. Her movements were slow, like every step carried the weight of her past. She reached out and touched the rough concrete. "It was here," she said quietly. "Right here." Mary could barely breathe. The air felt thick, heavy with secrets. After a long silence, Clara turned to her and whispered, "Now you know everything. Please, Mrs. Collins, don't tell anyone. David will come back. We can fix this. I just need time." Mary shook her head slowly. "You think I can keep this secret? You lied to my son. You brought him into this nightmare." Clara's eyes flashed with panic. "Please," she begged. "If you tell anyone, they'll take me away. David loves me. He'll forgive me. I just need him to come home." Mary stepped back, shaking. "You need help, Clara. You need to tell the truth." Clara's expression changed suddenly. The softness vanished. Her eyes turned cold. "I told you the truth," she said slowly. "That should be enough." Mary froze. "What do you mean?" Clara took a step closer. "You weren't supposed to find this place. I don't want to hurt you, Mrs. Collins, but if you try to ruin my life—" Her voice trailed off, but the message was clear. Mary's heart raced. She clutched her bag tightly. "Stay away from me," she said firmly. "I'm leaving." Clara smiled faintly. "Of course," she said softly. "But if you leave, remember, David will be caught in this too. He helped me move some things down here. The police won't care who's guilty. They'll blame both of us." Mary's breath hitched. "You're lying, am I?" Clara whispered. "Ask yourself, Mrs. Collins, how far would your son go for love?" Mary backed away slowly, tears in her eyes. "I'm going to find him," she said. "And when I do, I'll make sure you never hurt him again." She turned and ran up the stairs. Her hands shook as she unlocked the front door and stepped into the cold air. The wind hit her face, sharp and cold, but she didn't stop. She ran until she reached the bus stop, breathing hard, heart hammering in her chest. Her mind replayed Clara's words over and over. "David helped me." Could that be true? Would David really hide something like this from her? She reached home just before sunset. The sky was turning orange and gray. She locked the door and sat on her couch, trembling. For a long time, she just stared at the note David had written, "Forgive me. I didn't know until it was too late." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Oh, David," she whispered. "What did you do?" Suddenly her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. Her hands shook as she picked it up and answered. "Hello." There was silence for a moment. Then a voice, soft, broken, "Mom." Mary's heart leaped. "David, where are you? Are you okay?" "I can't talk long," he said, his voice low. "Clara's been lying. I found out everything. I'm not safe." Mary's breath caught. "Where are you? I'll come get you." "I can't tell you," he said quickly. "They're watching the house. But listen to me. Don't trust Clara. Don't go near her again." "David, please come home," she begged. "We'll go to the police together. We'll fix this." There was a long pause. Then he whispered, "It's too late, Mom." The line went dead. Mary screamed into the phone, "David, David." But there was no answer. Her heart raced as she tried calling him back, but the number showed disconnected. She collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Outside, thunder rumbled. The rain began to fall, tapping softly against the windows. Mary sat in silence, tears streaming down her face, until she noticed something strange. Through the window, across the street, a dark car was parked, headlights off and inside. She could see the faint outline of someone sitting there. Watching her house, she froze, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, the car door opened. A figure stepped out, holding something, an umbrella. Maybe the rain fell harder. And then, under the flickering streetlight, Mary saw the face. It was Clara. Rain poured heavily from the dark sky, striking the glass windows like endless whispers. Inside the small living room, Mary sat frozen, staring at the shadows standing under the streetlight. Her heart thudded in her chest as lightning flashed across the sky, and for a moment she saw the face clearly. It was Clara. Mary's blood ran cold. She stood up slowly, pressing her trembling hands against the window frame. The dark figure stood there motionless, holding an umbrella, her eyes locked on Mary's house. "Why is she here?" Mary whispered to herself. For a moment, neither of them moved. The rain grew heavier, masking every sound except the steady beating of water on the road. Mary stepped back, her breath shaky. She quickly turned off the lights in the room, letting darkness hide her. The house fell silent. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the storm outside filled the air. She crouched near the window again and peeked through the curtain. The figure was still there, standing completely still, like a statue. Mary's mind raced. Was she watching me? Did she follow me home? Her phone lay on the table beside her. She grabbed it with trembling fingers and dialed David's number again. But the call didn't go through. "Number unavailable. Please, God," she whispered. "Let him be safe." Her eyes flicked back to the window and the figure was gone. Mary's heart jumped. She pulled the curtain wider, scanning the street. The car was still there, but the door was open. No one was inside. A loud thud came from the back door. Mary's body stiffened. The sound came again. Thud, thud. Like someone was trying to push the door open slowly. She grabbed her phone again, but her hands were shaking too much to type. "Oh no! Oh no!" she whispered. Then the doorknob rattled. Mary's heart stopped. She ran toward the kitchen, quietly grabbing the nearest thing she could find, a metal pan. Her breathing grew fast, loud, uncontrollable. The doorknob twisted again. "Who's there?" she shouted. Her voice cracked, echoing through the dark house. No reply. Only the rain. She slowly stepped closer, holding the pan tightly. Then she saw it, a shadow passing by the glass window on the door. "Go away!" she screamed. Silence. And then a soft voice, muffled by the rain, said, "Mary, open the door, please. I just want to talk." Mary froze. It was Clara's voice. "No," she shouted. "Stay away from my house." "Mary, listen to me," Clara said softly. "You don't understand. You're in danger too." Mary's heart pounded. "You think I'll believe you? After everything you've done? After what you told me in that basement?" There was a pause. Then Clara said something that made Mary's stomach drop. "I didn't tell you everything." Mary stood silent, staring at the door. "Please," Clara said again. "Just let me in for a minute. I swear I won't hurt you. There's something you need to see." Mary's hand hovered over the lock, shaking. "You're lying. You're trying to trick me." "No," Clara said. "David's life depends on it." Mary froze. "What?" "I know where he is," Clara said quickly. "He called me. He said he was going to the old cabin near the lake. He said he wanted to tell you everything, but someone's following him." Mary's head spun. "You expect me to believe that? You think I'm stupid?" Clara's voice grew desperate. "I swear I'm not lying. He's in danger. Please, Mary, if you don't believe me, at least let me show you the message he sent me." Mary's mind screamed, "Don't trust her." But her heart couldn't ignore one word, David. She took a deep breath and unlocked the chain, leaving the main lock in place. She opened the door slightly, just enough to see Clara's face in the rain. Her hair was soaked, her mascara smudged, but her eyes looked terrified, not angry. "See?" Clara said, holding out her phone. "Look." Mary looked. On the screen was a message. The sender's name, David. The message read, "Clara, please don't tell Mom. I'm at the lake house. They're after me." I'll explain everything when it's safe. Mary's breath caught. Who's after him? Clara shook her head. I don't know. But he sounded scared. He told me not to trust anyone. Mary's heart raced. You're lying again. You're trying to get me alone. Clara's expression twisted in pain. You think I'd come here in the middle of the night, in this storm, if I wanted to hurt you? I'm trying to save him. Mary hesitated. Something about Clara's voice sounded different, weaker, frightened. Please, Clara whispered. He needs help. I can't go there alone. I just need you to come with me. We can find him together. Mary stood there in silence, the rain hitting her face, her mind torn between fear and hope. What if she was lying? But what if she wasn't? Finally, she said, Give me 10 minutes. Clara nodded quickly. Okay, I'll wait in the car. Mary shut the door and leaned against it, breathing heavily. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She looked at David's old photograph on the shelf, the one from his graduation. Please be safe. She whispered. She grabbed her coat, flashlight, and keys. Before leaving, she scribbled a note and left it on the table. If something happens to me, check the lake house. Then she stepped outside into the storm. The rain hit her like ice. The street was nearly empty, the only light coming from Clara's car headlights. Clara sat behind the wheel, staring straight ahead. Mary got in the passenger seat. Neither spoke as the car rolled out of the street and into the dark countryside. The drive was long and silent. The wipers squeaked across the windshield. Every few minutes, lightning flashed, lighting up Clara's pale face. Finally, Mary broke the silence. If you lied to me again, I swear I'll go straight to the police. Clara nodded. I understand. Why would David call you and not me? Clara's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He thought I could protect him. He knew I wouldn't stop until I found him. Mary frowned. From who? Clara didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, Someone who knows what happened to Michael. Mary turned sharply. What do you mean? Clara's eyes stayed on the road. I think someone saw what happened that night. They've been following me. I didn't believe it until now. Mary's stomach twisted. And now they're after David. Clara nodded slightly. Because he knows the truth. The rest of the drive was quiet, except for the sound of the storm. After almost an hour, they reached the lake house. It was old, wooden, and half hidden by tall trees. The windows were dark. Clara stopped the car and turned off the engine. We're here. Mary looked around. The air felt heavy, cold. Are you sure he's here? Clara nodded slowly. That's what he said. They both got out, the mud squelching under their feet. The smell of rain and wet earth filled the air. Mary lifted her flashlight, shining it on the porch. The door was slightly open. Her heart thudded. Someone's inside. Clara nodded. Stay close. They stepped inside the cabin. The air was damp and musty. Furniture was covered with white sheets, and the floor creaked with every step. David. Mary called softly. No answer. They moved deeper into the house. Then, from upstairs came a faint sound. A door closing. Mary looked at Clara. Did you hear that? Clara nodded. He's here. They climbed the stairs slowly. Every creak of the wood echoing in the silence at the end of the hallway was a half-open door. A dim light flickered inside. Mary pushed the door open. The small room was empty. Except for a single candle burning on the table and beside it a folded piece of paper. Mary's trembling hands picked up the note. Her flashlight shook as she read the words written in David's handwriting. Mom, if you're reading this, I need you to leave. Don't trust Clara. She's not who she says she is. Mary turned slowly, her face pale. Clara stood behind her, eyes dark and unreadable. Where is he? Mary whispered. Clara smiled faintly. He shouldn't have told you that. Mary took a step back. What did you do to him? Clara's voice grew soft. He didn't listen to me, Mary. He was going to ruin everything. I couldn't let that happen. Mary's breath caught. No, Clara stepped closer. I told you it was an accident the first time. But this time, She paused, her eyes cold. He left me no choice. Mary's body went numb. You're lying, she said. Weakly, Clara smiled again, but this time there was no emotion in it. Outside, thunder roared, and somewhere deep in the woods behind the cabin, a faint cry echoed through the storm. Mary's heart stopped. David? She screamed, running toward the sound. Clara's voice followed her, cold and distant. You'll never find him in time. The night was thick with rain and fear. Mary's heart pounded as she ran into the dark woods, her flashlight trembling in her wet hand. The trees loomed tall and black, bending under the storm. Wind howled through the branches, carrying strange echoes, one of them sounding too much like a cry. David. She screamed, her voice breaking through the roar of thunder. Where are you? Answer me. No reply. Her shoes sank into the mud as she stumbled forward. Every step splashed cold water onto her legs. The beam of her flashlight shook wildly, lighting the twisted trunks and glistening leaves. But nothing else. No sign of him. Behind her, the old cabin faded into the darkness. The door was still open, and for a brief second, she thought she saw Clara standing there, her silhouette framed in the candlelight. Watching, Mary turned and ran faster, not daring to look back again. David. She shouted once more, her voice desperate. Then she heard it, a faint sound, like someone groaning in pain. It came from somewhere ahead, near the edge of the woods. David. She called again. Another sound, clearer this time. A weak, hoarse voice calling, Mom. Mary's heart jumped. I'm coming, David. Hold on. She pushed through the wet branches, the rain stinging her face. Her flashlight flickered, the battery dying, but she didn't stop. She followed the sound until she reached a small clearing. And there he was. David lay on the ground near an old tree, his clothes soaked, his face pale and bruised. His eyes fluttered open weakly when he saw her. Mom. He whispered. Mary fell to her knees beside him. Oh my God, David. What happened to you? She tried to kill me, he whispered. His voice was weak, broken. Clara. She's not who you think she is. Mary pressed her trembling hands against his shoulders. Don't talk, honey. I'll get you out of here. No, he said, shaking his head slightly. You have to listen. She's been lying since the beginning. Mary's tears mixed with the rain. I know, sweetheart. But you're safe now. We'll go to the police. He grabbed her wrist with what little strength he had left. Mom, listen to me. It wasn't an accident. What happened to Michael? She did it on purpose. Mary froze. What? David coughed weakly. She told everyone it was an accident, but it wasn't. He found out who she really was. She changed her name, Mom. Clara isn't even her real name. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Mary's mind spun. What do you mean she changed her name? David struggled to speak, his breath uneven. Her real name is Lena Marks. She was married before Michael to a man named Peter Marks. He disappeared too. Police suspected her, but they couldn't prove anything. Mary's eyes widened in horror. Oh my God. She moved here after that, David continued weakly. She started over, met Michael, and when he found out the truth, she killed him too. She's done this before, Mom. Mary's heart pounded in her ears. We have to get out of here. Right now. She helped David up, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. He groaned in pain but tried to stand. His leg was bleeding, a deep gash near his knee. We need a hospital, she said, looking around frantically. But then a branch cracked behind them. Mary froze, slowly. She turned her flashlight toward the sound. The beam flickered over the trees and caught a glimpse of a figure standing among them. Clara, her hair was wet, her face half hidden in the shadows, but her eyes gleamed in the darkness. Mary, she called softly, step away from him. Mary's blood ran cold. Stay back, Clara. She shouted. Clara took a step forward, her tone calm but chilling. He's confused. He's hurt. He doesn't know what he's saying. David's grip tightened on his mother's arm. Don't believe her, he whispered. She tried to drown me. Clara's expression twisted slightly. I was trying to stop him, she said. He attacked me first. You know how emotional he gets, Mary? Mary shook her head, backing away. Stop lying. I know who you are. I know what you've done. Clara's calm broke. Her voice turned sharp, trembling with anger. You think you know me? You have no idea what I've been through. Everything I did to survive. You killed 2 men. Mary shouted. And now you want to destroy my son, too. Clara's eyes glistened in the flashlight beam. I loved your son, she said, her voice breaking. He was supposed to understand me. He promised he wouldn't tell anyone. David coughed. You were never going to let me live, he said weakly. You wanted to erase me, just like the others. Clara stepped closer, her eyes burning. I wanted us to start over. You couldn't let the past go. Mary raised the flashlight higher. One more step, and I swear, but Clara moved fast. She lunged forward, grabbing Mary's arm. The flashlight fell, the beam rolling across the wet ground. They struggled in the mud, rain pouring over them. Let him go. Mary screamed, pushing her away. Clara slipped and fell, but quickly crawled toward David, her hands reaching out. You don't understand, Mary. He's ruined everything. Mary grabbed a fallen branch and swung it, hitting Clara's arm. Clara screamed and stumbled backward. Run, David! Mary shouted. David tried to move, but he could barely stand. He fell again, gasping. Mary ran to him, helping him up as Clara slowly got to her feet. Her face twisted with rage. You can't run from me. Clara shouted. If I can't have him, no one will. She grabbed a rock from the ground and rushed toward them. Mary turned, holding up her hands. Stop, don't do this. But Clara didn't stop. Then, suddenly, bright lights cut through the darkness. A loud voice echoed from the distance. Police, drop it now. Clara froze, the rock still in her hand. 2 police officers emerged from the trees, flashlights and guns aimed. Drop it! One of them shouted again. Clara's face went pale. The rock slipped from her fingers and fell into the mud. Mary let out a shaky sob of relief as one officer ran to her side and another grabbed Clara, forcing her to the ground. You don't understand? Clara screamed. They're lying. I didn't mean to hurt him. Mary held David tightly, crying. It's over, sweetheart. It's over. An officer knelt beside them. Are you both okay? Mary nodded weakly. Please, help my son. He's hurt. They quickly called for an ambulance. As the officers led Clara away. She turned her head, her voice low but clear through the storm. You think it's over, Mary? She said, her eyes burning with fury. You don't know the whole story. Mary looked away, trembling. I know enough. But even as Clara was pushed into the police car, something about her words stuck in Mary's mind. The whole story. The officers helped Mary and David into the back of another vehicle as the rain finally began to slow. Inside the car, Mary held David's hand tightly. He was weak, his head resting against the seat. It's okay now, she whispered. You're safe. But David's voice was barely audible. Mom, she wasn't lying about everything. Mary frowned. What do you mean? David opened his eyes weakly. There was someone else. Someone who helped her cover it up. Michael wasn't her only secret. Before Mary could ask more, his head dropped to her shoulder. He had fainted. Mary's eyes filled with tears as the sirens echoed in the distance, carrying them away from the woods outside. The storm began to fade, but inside her heart, a new storm was just beginning, a storm of unanswered questions. Because if Clara wasn't lying about everything, then who else was part of this dark story? And why did it all lead back to her family? The rain had stopped, but the cold air still carried the smell of wet soil and fear. The ambulance lights flashed red and blue across the dark trees as Mary sat beside her unconscious son. Holding his hand tightly, David's face was pale, and every rise and fall of his chest felt like a fragile promise that he was still alive as the ambulance drove away from the woods. Mary kept staring at his hand, cold and weak in hers. The paramedic checked his pulse and said softly, "He's stable, but he's lost a lot of blood. We'll get him to the hospital fast." Mary nodded but didn't say a word. Her mind replayed Clara's voice again and again. "You don't know the whole story." Those words burned inside her. By the time they reached the hospital, the sky was slowly turning gray. Dawn was breaking, but the world around her still felt dark. They rushed David into the emergency room, and Mary sat outside, soaked and shivering, her heart heavy with worry and confusion. After what felt like hours, a doctor finally came out. "He's going to be okay," he said gently. "He needs rest and observation, but he's out of danger." Mary let out a shaky breath. "Thank God," she whispered. But before she could feel any relief, an officer approached her. It was the same man from the woods, Officer Parker. He looked tired, his uniform still wet from the rain. "Double quotes, Mrs. Carter," he said, pulling a chair near her. "We need to talk about what happened tonight." Mary nodded slowly. "I'll tell you everything I know." And she did, from the moment she arrived at the cabin to finding David and facing Clara in the rain. Parker listened carefully, taking notes. When she finished, he leaned back and sighed. "You did the right thing calling us Mrs. Carter. Clara Marks, or as she's known now, Clara Evans, has been under suspicion for years. 2 missing men linked to her, but there was never enough proof." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "She would have killed my son too." The officer nodded. "We'll keep her in custody until we gather enough evidence. But there's something else." Mary looked up quickly. "What do you mean?" Parker flipped through his notes. "We found records that suggest she wasn't acting alone. There were messages between her and someone using an alias M. We don't know who that is yet, Em." Mary repeated softly. Parker nodded. "She was getting help. Financial help, information, even transportation after the last incident. Someone covered for her every time she moved towns." Mary's stomach twisted. So she wasn't lying when she said someone else was involved. Parker nodded again. "We're checking her phone, her emails, everything. But if your son mentioned someone before he passed out, we need to know." Mary's heart sank as she remembered David's weak words in the ambulance. She wasn't lying about everything. Someone helped her. Michael wasn't her only secret. She looked up at the officer. David said there was someone else. Someone who helped her, and he mentioned Michael. Parker's eyes narrowed slightly. "Michael Carter, your eldest son?" Mary nodded. "Yes, he died in a car accident 2 years ago. But David always said something felt strange about that night." Parker leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Mary hesitated, her voice shaking. "The police said it was a drunk driver who hit him. But the man who caused the crash disappeared before trial. Then, a week later, Clara showed up in our town. She said she used to know Michael through work." Parker frowned. "That's how she met your family." Mary nodded slowly. "Yes, she came to pay her respects. But she stayed. She stayed too close." The officer scribbled something in his notebook. "That might not be a coincidence. Mrs. Carter, we'll check records from that case again." Just then the nurse came out and said, "You can see your son now." Mary stood quickly and followed her into the room. David was awake, weak but conscious. His eyes met hers, and a small, tired smile appeared on his lips. "Hey, Mom," he whispered. She sat beside him, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You scared me, David." "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to." Mary held his hand. "The police say she's been arrested. You're safe now." David looked away. "It's not over, Mom. She wasn't working alone." Mary frowned. "The officer told me about that. But who was helping her?" David took a deep breath. It was Michael's friend, Daniel. Mary's heart skipped. "Daniel, the one who used to work with him at the construction company?" David nodded weakly. "Yes, he was close to Clara. Too close. After Michael's death, they stayed in touch. He helped her get the fake documents. He knew everything." Mary felt her blood run cold. Why would he help her? David looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes. money, and love. He told me once he was in love with her before Michael met her. When she chose Michael, he couldn't let go. After Michael died, he thought he could finally have her. Mary's heart broke all over again. So all this time he was protecting her. David nodded slowly. He was the one who called her that night, the night she tried to drown me. He warned her that I found out the truth. Mary clenched her fists, anger replacing her fear. Then he's still out there. David nodded. He won't stop until she's free. He said he'd do anything for her. Before Mary could respond, the door opened. Officer Parker stepped inside. "Mrs. Carter," he said seriously, "we just got word. Clara escaped from police custody." Mary gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What? How?" Parker's face was grim. "On the way to the station. The car was found abandoned near the highway. The driver was knocked out. She's gone." David tried to sit up. "She'll come here," he said urgently. "She tried to finish what she started." Mary looked terrified. "We need protection." Parker nodded. "We're placing 2 guards outside your room right now. Don't leave this hospital without telling us. We'll find her." He left the room to make calls, and silence filled the air. Mary's heart raced. The sound of beeping machines and the faint footsteps outside the door felt louder than ever. David turned his head slowly, his eyes filled with worry. "Mom, she won't stop. She told me once if she ever gets caught, she'll take me down with her." Mary squeezed his hand. "She won't touch you again. I'll make sure of that." But deep inside, fear clawed at her. Outside the window, the first light of morning touched the glass. Everything looked calm, but calm was only the surface. Because somewhere out there, Clara was free. And she knew exactly where they were. The hospital lights buzzed softly above Mary's head. The sound was faint, but after a night full of screams, sirens, and thunder, even that soft hum made her feel uneasy. The world outside had gone quiet. Morning light spilled weakly through the blinds, turning the white walls a dull gray. Mary sat beside David's bed, watching him breathe. His skin was still pale, his body weak. But he was alive. That was all that mattered to her now. Yet peace didn't come easily. Every shadow in the room felt like a threat. Every sound in the hallway made her heart jump. Clara was out there somewhere, free. Officer Parker had placed 2 guards outside their door. Mary could hear the muffled sounds of their footsteps and the occasional radio crackle. But no matter how many police surrounded them, she couldn't shake the feeling that danger was near. She touched David's hand gently. "Try to rest," she whispered. "You need strength." David nodded weakly. "I can't sleep. I keep seeing her face, Mom, in the rain." "Screaming?" Mary's voice trembled. "Don't think about her. She's gone. The police will find her soon." But David shook his head. "You don't know her. She plans everything. If she escaped, it wasn't by accident." Mary didn't want to believe it, but deep down, she knew he was right. Clara wasn't the kind of woman who panicked. She calculated. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, checking on David, changing his bandages, whispering updates. Mary tried to stay calm, but the exhaustion was pulling her down. She hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, hadn't even changed her wet clothes. One of the nurses, a young woman with kind eyes named Liza, noticed her shaking hands and said softly, "Ma'am, you should rest a little. You've been up all night." Mary gave a tired smile. "I can't. I'll rest when my son is safe." Liza nodded, her expression full of sympathy. "I understand, but please at least have some tea. I'll bring you some." She left the room quietly. Mary sighed, staring at the door. For a brief moment, she felt comforted by Liza's kindness. But soon, that uneasy feeling returned. She looked toward the window. A faint shadow moved across the blinds. Mary froze. She stood up slowly and walked closer, her heart beating fast. But when she pulled the blinds aside, she saw nothing outside, just the hospital parking lot and the dull morning light. "Calm down," she whispered to herself. "You're just tired." A soft knock at the door made her jump. "It's me," said Liza's voice. Mary exhaled in relief and opened the door slightly. Liza smiled gently, holding a cup of tea. "Here you go, ma'am. Chamomile, it helps with stress." "Thank you," Mary said, taking it. "You're very kind." Liza gave a small nod, then glanced at David. "How is he?" "He's resting," Mary said. Liza stepped closer to check the monitors. Her movements were calm and precise. "He's improving," she said quietly, "but he needs to stay calm. Any stress could slow his recovery." Mary nodded, sipping her tea slowly. The warmth spread through her hands, easing the cold. Liza smiled faintly and said, "If you need anything, just press the button. I'll be on duty all day." "Thank you," Mary said softly. After Liza left, the room went silent again. But that silence didn't last long. A few minutes later, David stirred and opened his eyes. "Mom," he whispered, his voice weak. Mary leaned closer. "Yes, sweetheart." "Who was that nurse?" "Her name's Liza. She's very kind." "Why?" David frowned slightly. I've seen her before." Mary looked confused. "Here in the hospital." He shook his head slowly. "No, with Clara." Mary's blood ran cold. "What?" David's eyes flickered with fear. "I remember now. The night before the wedding, Clara went out for a walk, and when she came back, she was talking to that same woman. I thought she was just a friend, but it was her, that nurse." Mary's hand shook so badly that the teacup almost slipped from her grip. "Are you sure, David?" He nodded weakly. "I never forget faces. It was her." Mary stood up quickly, heart pounding. She ran to the door and peeked out into the hallway. The two guards were still there, standing alert. But Liza was nowhere to be seen. Mary turned back to David. "I'll be right back. Lock the door behind me, okay?" "Mom, wait," David said, but she had already stepped into the hall. She approached the guards. "That nurse who came in a few minutes ago, where did she go?" One of them frowned. "What nurse?" Mary froze. "Liza. She said she was on duty." The guard looked at his partner. "We haven't seen any nurse go in or out since the last shift ended an hour ago." Mary's heart dropped. "But she was just here. She gave me tea." The other guard's expression changed. "Ma'am, stay here. We'll check security." He rushed off down the hallway while the first guard stayed beside her, inside the room. David tried to sit up, but his wounds ached too much. His hand reached for the call button, but before he could press it, the lights flickered. A chill ran through him. "Mom," he called weakly. No answer. Then the lights went out completely. The room was swallowed by darkness. Only the faint red glow of the monitor screens remained. David's breath quickened. "Mom?" he called again. The door creaked open. He froze. "Who's there?" For a moment, there was silence. Then a soft whisper. "She?" "Don't be scared, David." That voice, he knew it too well. "Double quotes, Clara," he breathed. The door closed softly behind her. The shape of her figure appeared in the dim red light, her hair messy, her hospital gown replaced with dark clothes. She smiled faintly, though her eyes looked wild. "Miss me?" she asked. David's heart raced. "How did you?" "Liza helped me," she said calmly. "She owed me. You remember her, don't you? She was with me when you proposed. She helped us plan the wedding. My best friend." David shook his head weakly. "She's not a nurse, is she?" Clara smiled wider. "Oh, she is now. People can be whoever they want if they know how to fake it well enough." She walked closer, the soft sound of her shoes echoing on the floor. "You should have trusted me, David," she whispered. "We could have had everything." David tried to reach for the call button again, but she grabbed his wrist tightly. "Don't," she said softly. "You'll just make things worse. Why are you doing this?" He asked, voice trembling. "Because you betrayed me," she said, tears suddenly filling her eyes. "You promised me love, David. You promised me a life. But the moment you found out about Michael, you tried to destroy me." "I didn't want to destroy you," he said weakly. "I wanted to save myself." Her expression hardened. You sound just like him. Michael said the same thing before she stopped, then smiled coldly. Never mind. Suddenly, a loud knock hit the door. Mrs. Carter. Everything okay in there? It was Officer Parker's voice. Clara's head snapped toward the door. David shouted, "She's here!" She's before he could finish, Clara covered his mouth with her hand. Quiet, she hissed. David? Parker called again. Clara glared at the window. It was locked, but she didn't care. She ran to it, grabbed a metal chair, and smashed the glass. The noise exploded through the room. The door burst open. Parker and the guard rushed in. Guns drawn. Freeze! He shouted. Clara looked back once, her eyes wild, then jumped. Mary screamed from the hallway. No! Parker ran to the window, but Clara was gone, vanished into the bushes below. Call backup. He ordered. David was gasping for air, his face pale. Mary rushed to him, holding his face in her hands. It's okay, baby, it's okay, she whispered, though her own voice was shaking. Parker turned to her. We'll find her, Mrs. Carter. I swear it. But as he looked out the shattered window, he couldn't help feeling dread. Clara was smart and desperate. That made her dangerous. And she was still out there. The shattered window had been covered with wooden boards. But even after the glass was gone, fear still lingered in that hospital room like a heavy shadow. Mary hadn't left David's side since Clara's escape. Every time the door creaked or the wind hit the window, her heart jumped in her chest. Police surrounded the hospital now. Officers patrolled every hallway. Cameras were checked. Still, there was no trace of Clara. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Officer Parker came in often, tired but focused. We searched every nearby street, every empty building, nothing. But we won't stop. Mary nodded, though her eyes showed no relief. You don't understand, officer, she said quietly. She always comes back. David sat up slightly, his bandaged arm resting on the blanket. She planned everything, he said weakly. She probably had another hideout. She always has one. Parker sighed. We'll find her. I've already put her picture out across the state. She can't go far without being noticed. But David just shook his head. You don't know her. She doesn't run. She hides close enough to watch. That thought sent a chill through Mary's spine. After Parker left, she sat beside David and tried to distract him. We'll be fine, she said softly. Once you recover, we'll leave this place. We'll start over somewhere quiet. David looked at her with tired eyes. She won't let us. Mary forced a smile, though her voice trembled. She won't find us again. But deep inside, fear whispered otherwise. That night, when the hospital finally went quiet, Mary sat by the small table beside the window. The storm had passed days ago, but the sky was still heavy with clouds. The lights from the parking lot shone dimly, casting pale stripes on the floor. David had finally fallen asleep. His breathing was soft, steady. Mary rubbed her eyes, exhausted. Her phone lay on the table beside her, silent for hours. She picked it up to check the time. It was just past 2 a.m. Then the screen lit up suddenly. A message, unknown number, still watching. Mary froze. The words stared back at her, glowing in the dark. Her hands shook as she opened it. Another message came immediately after. Unknown number, he still loves me, you know? Even after everything, Mary's heart pounded. She stood quickly and looked out the window. The boards were sealed tight. But she still felt like eyes were on her. She called Officer Parker right away. Someone just texted me, she said, her voice trembling. It's her. It's Clara. Stay where you are, Parker replied quickly. Dante, touch the phone. We'll trace it. Within minutes, 2 officers rushed into the room. They took her phone, took pictures, and began working on tracing the number. David woke up to the noise. Mom, what's going on? Mary turned to him, tears in her eyes. It's her, David. She messaged me. David's expression hardened. What did she say? Mary hesitated, then whispered. She said she's still watching. David's jaw tightened. She's nearby, Mom. I told you she never runs far. Officer Parker returned within half an hour. We traced the message to a cell tower less than a mile from here, he said. But she's using a disposable phone. We can't pinpoint the exact spot. Mary's voice shook. So she could be anywhere. Near this hospital? Parker nodded. We've got teams searching the area. After he left again, Mary sat silently staring at the door. Every minute felt like an hour by morning. Exhaustion finally dragged her into a light sleep. But she woke up again to another sound, a soft tap on the window. Her eyes flew open. Tap, 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 slow, steady. She looked toward the boards. There was no light from outside, just darkness. But the sound came again. Tap, tap. Mary's throat went dry. "David?" she whispered. "Did you hear that?" He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. Mary stood up, her legs trembling. She took a deep breath and walked closer to the window. Her heart raced faster with every step. She touched the wooden board, pressing her ear against it. Nothing. Just the faint sound of wind, and then a whisper. "Mary?" She stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. The voice came from outside the window, low and cold. "Mary, you can't hide him from me." Mary turned and ran to the door, shouting, "Officer!" "Someone's outside." The guards rushed in immediately, one of them drawing his gun. "Check the window," she said, pointing. "She's there." They moved the boards carefully and shone their flashlights outside. But there was nothing. Only empty parking lot and moving shadows from the wind. "She's toying with us," one officer muttered, "trying to scare you." Mary sank onto the chair, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She already has. Hours passed again. Daylight came. Doctors entered, nurses came and went. Life moved on, but inside Mary's heart, there was no calm. Around noon, Officer Parker returned. We searched every inch outside. Nothing. But we found tire tracks near the service gate. Looked fresh. Mary frowned. "She has a car." He nodded. "Probably stolen. But there's something else. We ran a background check on the nurse, the real Liza from this hospital." Mary's eyes widened. "The real one. She was found dead in her apartment this morning," Parker said grimly. "We believe Clara took her identity before coming here." Mary covered her mouth in horror. "Oh my God!" David looked pale. "She's not just hiding. She's blending in," Parker nodded. "And she might still be trying to get close, maybe to finish what she started." That night, the hospital gave them a private security room with a lock and a camera. Mary didn't argue. She was too tired, too scared. David slept again, weak from his wounds. Mary sat awake, staring at her phone, now back in her hands. The police had finished checking it, but one thing kept bothering her. Clara had said, "He still loves me." Mary whispered to herself, "Who is he?" David was here. Clara had tried to kill him. So who else could she mean? Then a thought hit her, cold and cruel. Michael, her dead son. But that was impossible. He had died in a car crash still. Her mind wouldn't let go of the idea. She stood slowly and opened her purse, pulling out an old photo she always carried, a family picture from years ago. Michael stood tall beside David, both smiling. Behind them, Daniel, Michael's best friend, had his arm around their shoulders. Daniel, he had disappeared after the funeral. Never called, never visited. Mary's heart began to race. What if Clara wasn't alone? Not just because of love or money. What if someone else, someone still alive, wanted her to keep the secrets buried? Before she could think further, her phone buzzed again. Another message. Unknown number. "You should stop digging. Mary, you won't like what you find." Her hands trembled so badly that the phone nearly slipped. She looked at David, still sleeping peacefully, and whispered, "What are you doing, Clara?" "What do you mean?" The reply came almost instantly. "Unknown number. Ask Daniel. He's closer than you think." Mary's blood ran cold. She stood up, panic rising. She turned toward the door and froze. Through the small glass window in the door, She saw a man standing in the hallway. He was tall, wearing a gray jacket, and when he turned his head slightly toward her, she recognized him. Daniel, her late son's best friend. The man she hadn't seen since the funeral. He was here, and in that moment, she finally understood. Clara hadn't just escaped to run away. She'd escaped to reunite with him. The real plan was still unfolding. The moment Mary saw Daniel standing in that hospital hallway, her blood turned to ice. He looked different now, older, heavier, but that same familiar smirk played on his lips. The same one she had seen years ago when he'd stood at Michael's funeral, his eyes full of secrets. Mary's first instinct was to scream, but the words caught in her throat. Daniel slowly raised his hand and pressed a finger to his lips. Her heart pounded as he turned and walked away down the dim corridor. Without thinking, she followed. Every step echoed in the silence. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and fear. "Daniel?" she whispered loudly. "Stop." He didn't. He walked steadily until they reached the far end of the hall near the emergency exit. He turned then, his expression unreadable. "It's been a long time, Mary," he said quietly. Mary's hands trembled. "What are you doing here? What do you want?" "I came to see how much you've found out." "About what?" she asked, her voice sharp. Daniel gave a low, humorless laugh. "About Michael. About what really happened the night he died." Mary froze. "He died in a car crash," she said weakly. Daniel stepped closer. "That's what you were told." Her knees nearly gave out. "What are you saying?" Daniel sighed, glancing toward the end of the hall. "I told Clara to stay quiet, but she doesn't listen. She wanted revenge. I just wanted the past to stay buried." Mary's heart hammered. You and Clara. You were working together." He nodded slightly. "Since the night Michael died?" Tears filled her eyes. "Why? What does she have to do with my son's death?" Daniel's voice hardened. "Because she was there, Mary. She saw what happened. She saw me drive that car off the road." Mary's breath caught in her chest. "You killed him." Daniel's face darkened. "It was an accident. We were drunk. Michael wanted to confront you that night. He said you loved David more, that you never saw him. He was angry, reckless. He grabbed the wheel and we crashed. But I survived. And I couldn't let the truth come out." Mary stared in horror. "So you blamed him. You let me bury my son thinking he was at fault." Daniel's jaw clenched. "I had no choice. I had a record. The police would never believe me. Clara, she found out months later. She was Michael's secret girlfriend." Mary's knees went weak. "What?" Daniel nodded. "He never told you, did he? She was pregnant, Mary. She lost the baby after the crash. That's why she hates you. She blames your family for everything." Mary's mind spun in circles. "Oh my God." Daniel looked away. Clara wanted revenge. So when David met her by chance years later, she saw her opportunity. She pretended not to know him, played innocent, and planned her way into your lives. Mary felt dizzy, gripping the wall for support. "And you helped her." Daniel gave a tired sigh. "At first, yes. She said she just wanted closure. But when she started talking about killing David, I tried to stop her. That's why she ran. That's why she came here. She thinks she's finishing what began that night." Suddenly, a voice echoed from the shadows behind them. "You always talk too much." "Daniel." Mary turned sharply and saw Clara standing at the end of the corridor. Her hair was messy, her eyes wild, but she was calm in a terrifying way. "How sweet," Clara said softly. "A little reunion before the end." Daniel stepped in front of Mary protectively. "Clara, don't do this. It's over." Clara tilted her head. "Over, you've ruined everything. You killed Michael, lied to everyone, and now you think you can just walk away?" She took a step forward, a small pistol glinting in her hand. Mary gasped. "Clara, please, don't do this." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You don't know what it's like, Mary, to lose everything and see the people who caused it live happily while you drown in pain." "I lost my son too," Mary whispered. Clara's voice cracked. You lost him, yes, but you still had another son. You had David, your house, your peace. I had nothing. Daniel tried to move closer. Clara put the gun down. She pointed it at him. You don't get to tell me what to do. You took Michael from me. Mary's voice trembled. Please, Clara, you're hurting yourself. Michael wouldn't want this. For a moment, Clara hesitated. Her hand shook slightly. Tears rolled down her face. Then, in a flash, Daniel lunged forward. Now, the gun went off. Bang! Mary screamed as Daniel collapsed to the floor, clutching his chest. Blood spread quickly across his shirt. Clara dropped the gun, her face pale with shock. No. No, I didn't mean to. Before she could finish, officers came rushing around the corner. Officer Parker shouted, "Hands up." Clara didn't resist. She sank to her knees, sobbing. It was never supposed to end like this. They handcuffed her and led her away. Mary stood frozen, staring at Daniel's body as the medical team rushed in. He looked at her one last time and whispered, "Tell David, I'm sorry." Then his eyes closed forever. The world seemed silent. Later that morning, Mary sat in the hospital garden, numb. The sun was rising, but it felt cold. David sat beside her, still weak, but alive. "Is it really over, Mom?" he asked softly. Mary nodded slowly. "Yes, it's finally over." David took her hand. "I can't believe Clara did all that. Or that Daniel." Mary looked away. They were both broken by the same tragedy. But they chose revenge instead of healing. There was a long silence between them. The wind rustled the trees gently dot. After a while, David said, "I wish Michael were still here." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "Me too, sweetheart. But I think he's finally at peace now." Days later, Clara confessed everything to the police. She admitted her connection to Michael, her loss, her revenge. The media called it the hidden wedding murder case. But for Mary, it wasn't about headlines. It was about finding peace after years of secrets and lies. One evening, she visited Michael's grave alone. She placed fresh flowers there and whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't see your pain. I'm sorry it took so long to learn the truth." The wind blew softly, and for a moment she thought she heard his voice faint. Peaceful. "I forgive you, Mom." Tears streamed down her face as she smiled through the pain. When she returned home, David was waiting at the door. "You okay?" he asked. Mary nodded. "I think I am now." Life gives us pain to teach us something. We can't change the past, but we can choose what kind of people we become after it. David smiled sadly. "I'll never forget what we went through." "Neither will I," she said softly. "But maybe now we can start again." She looked out at the fading sunset, orange, gold, and peaceful. For the first time in years, the silence felt calm, not empty. The storm had finally ended.